Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. The US elections, what you need to know analysis. http ntvforex.com news ID EE7EB88 26/2021 59:17 p.m. As the Democratic convention ends and the Republicans prepare for theirs next week, Joe Biden holds a substantial lead over Donald Trump in the opinion polls. But there is a long way to go in this presidential election. The House and Senate are also in play and will determine how meaningful a shift in policy we will see over the next 4 years. NBSP The election. What to look out for. This briefing note summarizes what is happening at the election on November 3, the key issues and what could yet swing the outcome of the vote. We outline the key policy thrusts of the two candidates and conclude with some scenarios and their implications for the economy and markets. We will be publishing an updated scenario analysis together with Oxford Analytica at the beginning of October, with a subsequent webinar. Invites will be sent soon. Our previous report can be found here. NBSP What is happening. The U.S. presidency is determined by the Electoral College. It is not a straight vote count but a state-by-state battle. 4-year term. In 2016, Hillary Clinton received 2.8 million more individual votes than Donald Trump. Joe Biden currently has a 7-point national polling lead, which would equate to 9 million more votes than Donald Trump based on the 2016 turnout. The number of Electoral College votes per state electors is equal to the sum of the state's seats in the Senate 2 each and the House of Representatives. There are 538 electors in the Electoral College with at least 270 votes required for victory. It is a very rough proxy for population size, with California receiving 55 votes while Wyoming gets 3. However, there are 720,000 people per the Electoral College vote in California and just 193,000 people per Electoral College vote in Wyoming, so there is an inherent bias that boosts the influence of predominantly rural states. Congress. All 435 members in the House of Representatives are up for election currently. 232 Democrat, 198 Republican, 1 Libertarian, 4 vacant. 2-year term. The Senate is comprised of 100 members each with 6-year terms. A third are up for election every 2 years. Currently, the Senate membership is 53 Republican, 45 Democrat, and 2 independents who vote with the Democrats. 33 Senate seats, 2 seats due to vacancy, are up for special elections on November 3. Of the 35 Senate seats up for election, 23 are Republican and 12 are Democrat. Democrats would need to win a net 4 seats from the Republicans to control the Senate. If Joe Biden wins the presidency, they would only need to win 3 additional seats, since VP Kamala Harris would have a deciding ballot on any vote. Polls suggest Democrats will likely lose their Alabama Senate seat. NBSP What are the key issues? The presidential election will likely come down to 5 swing states, since we know California and New York will vote Democrat and we know Wyoming and Alabama will vote Republican. The main 5 swing states are Pennsylvania Biden 6% versus Trump in the latest local poll, Florida Biden 6%, Wisconsin Biden 6%, Michigan Biden 7% and Arizona Biden Trump in polls. Trump won all 5 in 2016. Local polls are currently pointing to the potential for a landslide Biden victory. Even Texas and Alaska are close calls. In 2016, Trump beat Clinton by 9% in Texas and by 14.7% in Alaska. COVID-19 consumer confidence crushed on renewed containment measures implemented by states that had reopened too quickly. Florida seniors are deserting Trump on his COVID response. A vaccine could be a game changer, but even with 1 million inoculations a day, it would take a year to complete. Containment measures will continue through the election. Jobs. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania have been hit hard by job losses, worse than the national average. Jobs growth is plateauing and 31 million people's incomes dropped after the ending of $600 unemployment benefit payment. President Trump has introduced a new $400 payment, with states contributing 25%, but many can't afford to. BLM polls suggest a majority are uneasy about how Trump has handled the Black Lives Matter protest movement. NBSP What factors could yet swing the outcome? A significant increase in mail-in ballots is likely, but the U.S. Postal Services has warned it may not be able to handle the situation in a timely manner, perceived to be damaging to Democrats, although extra funding may arrive. A rapid acceleration in COVID-19 cases would reflect badly on Trump's muddled messages on the virus regarding masks, a potential vaccine, dubious treatments. We see the risk of some economic data disappointment, with high-frequency indicators suggesting employment is no longer growing and credit and debit card transactions are falling. An equity market correction after a vigorous rally would be bad news for Donald Trump. Developments in the sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden, accusations regarding Ukraine and family connections would be damaging to Biden. The Democrats have more money to spend. Biden to spend $280 million on advertising in 15 states versus Trump's $145 million according to latest estimates. Senate Republican Party investing $100 million in just 8 seats to protect its majority. Presidential debates could see Biden come under major pressure. The risk of an error or rambling, weak performances as sometimes occurring during Democrat primaries means victory is not assured. The format could be important. NBSP potential for dispute, a historical precedent. 2000 presidential election. Democrat Al Gore received 544,000 more votes, but George W. Bush won 30 of the 50 states' 271 electoral votes to 266. Florida was undecided. Gore conceded, but then withdrew the concession. Bush had won by a small margin and a recount was required. Bush won by 537 votes and Supreme Court voted 5-4 in favor of ending additional recounts. Bush declared the winner after 5 weeks on December 12. November 7 was Election Day. Checks and balances. Republicans will step up to prevent harm to the party rather than to protect Trump should he refuse to concede the election. They swiftly rebutted his idea of delaying the election. The Supreme Court would rule. A potential issue could be violence with the threat of right-wing militia action. QAnon etc. NBSP Trump's re-election campaign slogans: Keep America Great and Promises Made, Promises Kept. A continuation of the tax cut and deregulation policy thrust from his first term, this time centered on the payroll tax. America First worldview equates to prioritizing America's economic interests over leadership roles in global affairs. Withdrawal of the World Trade Organization appears likely, with tariffs continuing to be used as the main tool to promote reshoring of manufacturing and lowering the trade deficit. Further reductions in immigration with the promotion of a merit-based system prioritizing migrants with certain skills while clamping down harder on illegal immigration. Renewed attempts to repeal President Obama's Affordable Care Act to be replaced with a new system promoting choice and lowering premiums. An energy policy that remains focused on the use of fossil fuels and the scaling back of Obama-era environmental regulations. NBSP Biden's policy stance campaign slogans: Unite for a better future and build back better. Not a radical, not a revolutionary. Will remain tough on China with regard to technology, intellectual property, trade, bringing American jobs home, but more likely to do it within an international framework, collaborate with allies with less belligerence and more willingness to engage. He wants to return to WHO and is unlikely to pull out of WTO. International relations are increasingly driven by security and human rights environmental issues. He may remove some tariffs on China, which have put up costs for U.S. business, and instead offer financial incentives to U.S. companies to bring jobs back to America. European relationships would likely improve, but NATO will remain an issue. America will not write checks to cover defense. Will likely rejoin Paris Climate Change Accord and be more willing to work with Europe. Encouragement for European tech companies to replace Chinese partners. In return, the US may seek broader access to gas markets in Europe at the expense of Russia. The perception that Biden takes a dim view of Brexit and, given his Catholic Irish heritage, could be vocal on any deal that may be detrimental to Ireland. Promoting unionist labor in rebuilding infrastructure: roads, bridges, water systems, electricity grid. Raise the minimum wage to $15 hour. Supporting investment in U.S. auto in return for greater unionization. Raising the corporate tax rate to 28%. Reversing 2017 tax cuts and raising capital gains tax to the marginal income tax rate. $2 trillion to be invested over 4 years in clean energy with 100% clean energy electricity standards by 2035. An opportunity for European companies. $775 billion plan to bolster childcare and care for elderly financed by taxes on real estate investors with incomes greater than $400,000. Preventing investors deferring taxes if capital gains are invested in another property while also preventing the use of real estate losses to lower income tax bills. Will fund universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds with an $8,000 tax credit for childcare for low-middle income households with increased pay for caregivers. Creates 3 million jobs. Will also fund policies to make caring at home easier for the elderly. Fund equipment, handrails, etc., easier door handles. Elizabeth Warren could receive a role regarding financial services. Reform private equity to abolish a legalized looting by changing tax and bankruptcy rules and ensuring impacted workers continue to receive pay and benefits when it goes broke. Reform bank executive pay and create a 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act to create a barrier between commercial and investment banks. Reversing Trump deregulation. Trump has lowered capital requirements, weakened stress tests, amp living wills, allowed more proprietary trading, reducing prudential regulation. NBSP The Kamala Harris effect. Like Joe Biden, she is seen as a centrist more orientated to incremental rather than radical change. As such, it doesn't signal a meaningful shift in the outlook for what a Biden presidency would seek to achieve. Long been the Marquette's anticipated VP candidate, so it had limited market impact. Betting markets saw her as the clear favorite with implied odds giving her a 50% chance of being nominated through July and August in what was a crowded field. It reaffirms the belief that the left wing of the party has been sidelined. For example, Harris does not support a wealth tax or call for the breakup of big tech companies. No support for modern monetary theory as espoused by the likes of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which would risk severe market discontent, especially for the U.S. dollar. Harris is a senator from California, a safe Democrat territory, so she doesn't meaningfully boost the chances of winning one of the swing states where a VP candidacy would be more influential on the overall outcome. She is of Indian and Black heritage, which may boost voter appetite. Turnout in some demographics. Black voters make up around 13% of the electorate, but Asian Americans only make up 5%, Hispanic is 13% and white is 67%. NBSP 3 possible scenarios. Trump wins a narrow victory. Policy thrust is low tax, low regulation with some infrastructure spending. A continuation of somewhat unpredictable and impulsive decision-making. Congress is split with the Democrats retaining the House, so Trump struggles to implement major domestic legislation. Democrats block key tax cuts and major deregulation. Some scope for compromise on infrastructure spending, but Trump is effectively left with an international agenda intensifying trade, tech, security, IP battles with China and Europe. Federal Reserve Chair Powell is replaced with a more sympathetic Fed chair. Extension of protectionism leaves activity currencies under pressure. EUR/AMP CNY and by default the dollar stronger. This could reverse if President Trump hollows out the federal return of the trade war agenda, keeps interest rates pinned down whilst the absence of tax cuts in the next 2 years fails to boost risk appetite. Wide deficit already priced in. Slow re-steepening of the USD curve as the recovery takes hold. Biden wins presidency, but Senate held by Republicans. Policy thrust is higher taxation for corporates. AMP wealthier, higher incomes with more spending on health, education. AMP infrastructure. Greater regulation of big tech, energy, and financial services. A more consensual style of president with better European relations, but retaining a robust attitude towards Chinese business practices and behaviors. Will need to work with Republicans on a quid pro quo basis, which may dilute some of his plans, but an effective legislative agenda is possible working with Republican moderates. The scenario that probably leads to the best fiscal performance given watering down of key spending plans. Federal Reserve left largely unchanged. Net tighter fiscal policy under Biden and a return of multilateralism is initially a dollar negative, where a benign dollar decline unfolds as world trade volumes slowly recover. NBSP initial knee-jerk reaction of policies that can be construed as detrimental to the stock market partially offset by more predictable trade policy and relationship with allies trade partners plus less scope to implement anything radical. Slightly faster bear steepening of the USD yield curve to account for the lower trade risk premium in the months following the election. Biden landslide with Democrats controlling both the House and the Senate policy thrust and behaviors identical to above. Looking for lots of a quick wins. He will recall the issue with Obamacare and will want quick results, fearing that a resurgent Republicans in 2 years at the midterms could mean future policy changes are more likely to be blocked by Congress. Federal Reserve required to take greater account of social factors in monetary policy decision-making. Policy arguably looser for longer, but at the current juncture with no rate hikes expected before end 2022, limited impact on markets. Likely to see federal deficits remain wider for next couple of years, but significant investment programs and employment strength could result in structurally healthier performance in subsequent years, particularly if accompanied by higher taxes for corporates wealthy. Dollar initially weaker as above, but should better balanced growth emerge, and the budgetary position improves as it did under Clinton in the late 90s, Biden could ultimately prove a dollar positive. Could result in a negative knee-jerk reaction in stocks in the near term but leave room for a reflation trade as investment programs, minimum wage, greater growth are priced in. Possible initial bull flattening of the USD curve on risk-off markets but a subsequent re-steepening with a much higher endpoint compared with the two scenarios above. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me/mt5.expert.advisors.